standard deadline given by the Independent National Electoral Commission for political parties to upload candidates' data for the 2027 general election expired on Tuesday, July the 14th. Still, after that time frame, which was a 3-day extension, about 3 political parties are reportedly yet to upload the names of their presidential and vice presidential candidates to the portal of the electoral umpire. Well, it appears there may be no more grace periods because the Court of Appeal in Abuja has now validated the guidelines of the Independent National Electoral Commission on the conduct of the 2027 general election and the regulation of timelines. What does this mean for opposition politics and participatory democracy? This, amongst other issues, gets our attention on Political Paradigm today on the program. I am Bukola Koka, standing in for your regular anchor, Terry Ikumi. Welcome. After the break, I'll introduce my guest. Stay with us. Welcome back. My guest today is Nigerian politician and former chairman of the Interparty Advisory Council. Of course, he wears many hats as he also served as a presidential candidate for the PPA party in the 2019 general elections. Mr. Peter Ame, good afternoon and welcome to Political Paradigm.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. Good afternoon, Nigerians.
Let's begin with what is uppermost in the minds of political party managers at the moment. It appears as if the door has now been firmly closed with the appeal court judgment validating INEC's guidelines to regulate the timetable for submission of candidates list. And there are concerns that many actors may have missed this window. What does this portend for the 2027 general elections?
It comes with a lot of uncertainty that we're going to be having an election in January, and already we are still here with litigations about procedural issues, about regulation, whether subsidiary, whether principal law. It undermines the certainty that normally comes with electoral regulation and electoral management system globally. So, but what we should understand is that I have also reached a statement that overbearing regulations that comes to have a hand in the affairs of the management of political party will not help our political party to become robust, to manage their affairs internally, and have independence of operation. Because these are something that has been established by the Constitution. Because the political party too, they are principal stakeholders in the electionary process, and we also have their own power drawn from the Constitution in Section 221 up to 229. So if you look at these kind of regulations that goes into the internal affairs to undermine the party's power to sit in each of his organ unit, maybe the National Executive Committee, the National Convention, to take decisions that will benefit the general interest of the people who are subscribed to the members of the party, will not really deepen our democratic culture. So that Supreme Court judgment that have upheld, yes, INEC has the power to make subsidiary legislation, to organize elections, to conduct and manage the affairs of our election. They are not just a registrar of political party. They are also a regulator, but that regulator will work within certain framework, and should not be superintendent over the affairs, over the constitutional provision that gives the political party internal control of their management system. So these are just some of the red lines that we need to draw, and this thin line must be drawn well so that INEC does not cross one path to undermine the independence of party management system. So, but if you look at what the other appeal court judgment have done, the one from Zenith Labour Party, they have clearly said that Section 775, Section 776, Section 777 is an aberration, and it is encroaching into the independence of the party to manage the affairs, as in Section 221 and 222. That judgment was clear that the political party and the Constitution already have a pre-qualification and disqualification provision within the Constitution in Section 177 and Section 182 for anybody who will be eligible to contest election, or those who will be ineligible to contest election. So for you to now bring another electoral act that is a subsidiary legislation under the electoral act to say that Section 774 will determine eligibility to vote at the primaries, Section 775, 776 will determine who to participate in the primaries and to determine who to be voted for. It's totally out of trying to undermine the provision of the Constitution. So that General Labour Party judgment that came up yesterday on Thursday also have really knocked out the earlier request by Youth Party, because this was very specific. This was specific that it goes to the root of the provisions of the Electoral Act that contradict the provisions of the Constitution, and says that if you are now saying that register of political party will determine who will vote in the primaries of a political party and give within a particular timeline to which people will become members and be voted for, that is no longer the kind of interest that the Constitution actually established within the framework of its provision in Section 177 and Section 182. You know, so it's clear, 188 too. So it's clear that what we need to do is for us to understand that yes, where the INEC has managerial and all the authority to regulate the internal affairs of politics, it must regulate it in line with the provision that is a principal law, that is the ground law of our constitution, of our country, which is our constitution. So anything they are trying to create in order to strangulate, restrict the participation of the opposition political party in the process, will further undermining the inclusivity that our democracy was intended to give to the Nigerian people.
You have brought in another dimension to the conversation entirely with the court judgment on the suit by the Zenith Labour Party, I believe. But that of the Youth Party, upon which the appeal court judgment is founded on, is from Section 29 of the Electoral Act 2026 as amended. And I read, every political party shall not later than 120 days before the date appointed for submission of list of a general election under this act submit to the commission in the prescribed candidates and their forms, the list of the candidates of the party, and it goes on. And many are saying that perhaps the Youth Party may want to appeal, take this upstairs to the Supreme Court. But in the preparation, in the engagement, in the hearings that formed if you like, consensus that led us to the amendment of the Electoral Act 2026, where would you be laying the responsibility for the legal conundrum that we now find ourselves in? Because some would say that the current INEC chairman is himself an astute legal practitioner, vast in evidence law. And we also have lawyers at the National Assembly who, presided over the amendment. So where would you be laying the responsibility for this legal challenge where we are right now?
For one, I need to clear before I proceed that the register of the timeline that was created by the electoral was 120 days. INEC unilaterally breached that timeline, in trying to create their own timeline, we brought hasty process to the conduct of party affairs, and parties were running scatter to be able to make available their digital registration to INEC. Most parties had, manual register prior before that law was made. So conversion and re-registration took a lot of, a very stressful period for them. Yes, INEC made their own mistakes, but the major mistake will rest on the doors of those who make laws for the good governance and development of our country. And those are the people in the National Assembly who are only interested in making laws for the protection of self, rather than for the larger protection of our collective well-being. Because what the kind of law they are making is they are using their majority, which I call tyranny of the tyranny of majority, to be able to make laws to interest the party in government. Because you cannot say that the opposition would have been able to rewrite that law, because it's about voting, it's about majority numbers that are available. So it is at the National Assembly that this process, this crisis, this confusion, this undermining of our collective participation in our democracy, because participation is key. Anything you do to try to restrict the fundamental rights of Nigerians to participate, to belong freely to a political party that protects their interests as enshrined in Section 40, undermines the foundation of our democracy. So these are the challenges that we are facing, and we need to continue to speak to the National Assembly because their primary responsibility first is to Nigeria and to the people of this country. And that primary is established upon the provision of the Constitution that they shall make laws for the good governance and development of this country. Not laws that will be retrogressive, not laws that will continue to bring crack to the multi-party democratic system and inclusive system that has been built by the 1999 Constitution, fifth alteration, I think, as amended. So it is clear that this National Assembly did not mean well, because from even the reduction of 160 days to 120 days before the conduct of election, and the one of 90 days to 60 days for the substitution of candidates was clearly done without even consultation with INEC, because these are not provisions that were were put forward by INEC to the electoral board, to the National Assembly for amendment. Even the civil society and those who participated in election governing system along Nigeria to try to look at the credibility of election. Nobody put that forward. And people complain. I know Jaga also complain. I know a lot of organizations complain, and political parties also complain. But the people at the National Assembly have clearly taken it upon themselves to say it is what they want for their own selfish and self-centeredness that they will impose on the collective general public. So it is not a good thing what we are seeing, and they are weakening the fabric of our democratic development. They are weakening the strength of the political party to manage their internal affairs. If you also look at Section 84, where you try to say that you make procedure on how direct and indirect primaries and consensus. And because they wanted a situation where the parties will find themselves in the conundrum, they went ahead and make laws to say that no, you're only going to have direct and consensus, and there's no indirect. The parties are supposed to have internal management mechanism, and this dynamics comes from the fact that they can sit and say which of these three available processes will be more suitable for the management of our primaries. But that was taken away unilaterally by those who make laws for our multi-party democratic practice.
But Mr. Ahmed, some would say that they would lay this also at the doorstep of pressure groups, which should bring their full weight to bear on the engagements that form our democratic ideals, and hence IPAC, an organization that you headed, didn't pull its weight in ensuring that the interests of political parties were well represented amid this conversation. Why do you think pressure groups like that have been powerless? Instead, most of them are embroiled in internal wranglings within their own political parties. So why do you think they've been powerless to pull their weight amid this conversation?
Because I've managed IPAC before, even as national secretary twice, as national chairman twice in the past, I can tell you that the challenges of political parties are multifaceted. In the area that I want to say, if you look at Section 225A, people use they dangle this armor on their neck and say that, oh, you did not win the election, we are going to deregister you. They look for a way to cause confusion within the political party, and also the over-judicialization of our political party management, where every decision taken will be adjudicated upon, and the court will give decision that is contrary to some of the provisions of the party constitution, electoral act, regulations by INEC. And these are a lot of discussion that people are having on how to make sure that we strengthen our political party system in the sense that they can be self-reliant, and they can have the capacity to also defend their own interests and defend the collective interest of the members that have subscribed to the platform of their own separate parties. So, but the challenge we have generally is that if you have system that we undermine the collective decisions of political parties, if you have a system that is so strong that political parties no longer have a voice, then you have a challenge. But what we will say is that the political parties must see that they are number one primary critical stakeholder in the electionary process, because they are the only one who can sponsor a candidate, who will be on the ballot, who will canvass for candidates, and then get elected. And these candidates are elected on their platform. So if they don't go extra mile to try to make sure that the dictatorial tendencies of those in power to reduce the political space from expanding or from having ability for people to have freedom to express their views, and then they will further be conscripting the space and reducing their own opportunity to have a system that will protect the rights of their members that are going into election. So yes, we agree that there must be more advocacy, there must be more people who are willing to press and protest for interests that will be protected, because democracy does not just survive by you electing people and you disengaging from the process, you become disillusioned, you walk away and wait for another 4 years to try to go to the polls. Democracy is a process, and in that process, you must participate in all of the processes. And if you look at even for civic education, you will see that they tell you that protest is one of the most important ways to hold government accountable. If people have been elected to National Assembly, and you find out that what they are doing is not to the collective interest of our majority of our people, because there can be the minorities who are benefiting from the process, who will be singing yes on your mandate to stand, but there will be also the majority who are supposed to be the major cross of development and governance policy, who are not getting the benefit. If they sleep on their right, nobody is going to come to help them, because you cannot sleep on your right and then expect remedy to come from the place where the problem came from. So generally, we need more citizens' advocacy, more citizen participation, and more political party interest in the process, and pushing forward to know that when such law and those processes start in the National Assembly, there must be proper engagement to make sure that those kind of laws that undermine the general participation of our people does not see the light of the day.
Well, for the majority that you're talking about, I'm assuming that it's the electorate. Someone has to bail the cat or be in the vanguard on their behalf to take the charge. But let's narrow it down now, Mr. Ame. For your political party, I believe the NDC, have you missed the timeline, or have all candidates at all levels successfully uploaded their forms to the INEC portal for processing?
I think I would say I've not heard any complaint to the contrary, and I think that the party did everything and went through the whole new technology approach in uploading candidates, and have also forwarded manually. So I think that the party is on course, to participate in the election fully, and I have candidates across all constituencies and governorship position that is being, including the presidential and vice presidential position that is being contested for. The first name that was uploaded was Peter Obi and Kwankwaso, and the party made it a public, make a public statement out of it that these principal leaders have been uploaded to the INEC platform. And I know that the other uploading was going on. As at the time, 14th of this month, that was the last day for the uploading of governorship, National Assembly, and presidential candidate and their vice. Our party did everything, and they met up with the deadline.
Now, there are some key political parties that we're hearing may have missed that timeline. We don't know if Youth Party is going to head to court, but if what we have definitively on the ballot for 2027 as it stands is or are the NDC, the APC, I'm not quite sure about the ADC yet, if they have confirmed that they have uploaded their presidential candidates on the INEC portal. What will the calculations then look like for the 2027 general election?
The general election in 2027 would have been, you are bringing the scorecard of those in power, to the public, because those in power will be telling the public what they've done out of the promise they made before they got into office in 2023. So, and those in opposition will be able to state clearly what they've not done and what they intend to do better. So, but what we have now in Nigeria is the general situation where people are in mass poverty. It's not my data, it's the data of international organizations of monetary organizations. So if you look at the population today, where 63% of our people are living below abject poverty. So, and you look at the situation where you look at the fiscal responsibility of the government that is not being transparent, the government is not being accountable, the government is not showing compassion or empathy towards the challenges that the poor, especially, are feeling.
Let me be more specific. If by certainty what we have on the ballot is an Obi, Kwankwaso, Tinubu, Shettima, maybe of certainty also Atiku Abubakar and Rotimi Amechi on the ballot, what are the chances of an upset in this election, in the coming presidential election?
From publicly available data, and if you look at the kind of pressure that the presidential candidate of the NDC is receiving, both from those who are in power and those who sympathizers of those in power. If you look at the concentration of forces on Peter Obi and Kwankwaso, and everyday discussion, whether on national or conventional or non-conventional media, you will see that it is the main challenger to this government, and they are really panicking and afraid to make sure that they fight him in a way that is not democratic. It's Peter Obi. And they are doing everything, and it's obvious. You don't need anything. When the candidate says he wants to go to Benue to campaign, and the governor, they will make a statement that you are not welcome. When the candidate wants to go to Edo, and the governor of Edo is already making statements everywhere that you cannot welcome, you must get permission. In a free democratic society, where the freedom of right, the freedom of association, and freedom of movement is clearly enshrined in our constitution, the governor will make such public statements. And you can see that the party is not even calling these governors and say, oh, this statement you are making is not in line with the doctrines of democratic practice. The party at national headquarters, the state, are happy with it. And then you see that the Peter Obi went to Edo, and there were gunfire at his vehicles, and hoodlums and thugs attacked him. So for me, I think Nigerians knows. And I don't know what figure that would have been undermined by the glitches of the 2023 election that is really scaring those in power. And the APC, I don't know what figure they saw, whether the INEC saw or the APC saw, that is scaring them to say that if we allow citizens who voted in 2023 to go, especially with the new grounds that have been gained by the Nigerian Democratic Congress, with the presidential candidate and the vice presidential candidate coming together in a very sacrificed manner to be able to give a unity ticket to this country that will bring about healing and bring about community understanding and communal relationship across regions. You will find out that the major person that will be on the ballot and create an upset is Peter Obi and Kwankwaso ticket.
Well, you have for about half the time, chosen to highlight the woes of your principal, and some would say that is just to whip up public sympathy. But more importantly is, the dynamics, the, objective of the question would be what votes he's able to glean from what region of the country. If we have time, we'll get back to that. But I want to come to you now. You were a presidential candidate for the PPA in 2019. In 2023, I believe, you were a House of Reps candidate for the Labour Party, and now you are in the NDC. What is the NDC offering you that these other preceding political parties could not?
Yes, first of all, it's not the crisis in Labour Party, and yes, I love the social democratic policies of the Labour Party. There's no doubt about that. But I've always been somebody who also believes in credibility, believe in people who run government offices with honesty. And I've known Peter Obi, the former governor of Anambra, for quite some time, many years now back. I've seen his trajectory, I've seen his antecedent and how he managed public funds. Because transparency in our public management system is also a problem. Today you hear about 8-point-something trillion being managed outside the budget, as stated by International Monetary Fund. You hear about all sorts of things, 3 billion naira, allocated for refineries, and there's no investigation about that. So these are the reasons I decided that, instead of staying back, let me continue with him to where he was, whatever platform that he will continue to pursue his dream. And when we look at the policies and the interest of those who actually form the NDC, it's an interest that want to pursue the understanding that Nigeria deserves better.
You have signposted the competence of your principal in managing finances, and that's where I want to quickly follow up on. But that is contrary to what we're hearing from the chieftain of another political party, who also happened to be an ardent supporter of your principal prior to this time. I'm sure you know whom I'm referring to, Mr. Kenneth Okonkwo, who has talked about candidates of the party, aspirants of the party, who have said that they, asked to pay a certain sum, and at the end of the day, they didn't get their tickets for contest in the elections, and he has provided evidence of extortion, so to speak. So if that were the case, some would say that the NDC is looking more like the problem that he chooses to solve in Nigeria, yet you are saying that, this party is competent and your principal is competent. Why should we believe you? Why should Nigerians believe you?
There's a lot of public record why people should believe me, why people should believe, the competency of the person I speak for. I've been consistent. I've not been a controversial politician. It's not difficult to be controversial. It's easy. It sells more. It's easy for you to be controversial. I could say one thing today and say another, because I've tried my best to be consistent, to say that whatever I said last year, you can come back and meet me and saying it. I don't want a situation where I'm praising a man 2 years ago and today I'm praising another person. I've never done that. I have consistency in this principle, and I will not join issues with things that are not realistic. Because those who were mentioned are those who said that Mr. Peter Obi, who has a credibility that, that everybody is, can relate with, who have a disciplined culture of how public finances should be managed. A lot of people can relate, those who have worked with him. He's not somebody that wants to get enriched from public fund. And he has said it several times that it is not his interest, that he already has all he needs to live a happy life for the rest of his life, including for his family. So what I'm saying, the person that was mentioned on television to have said that and sent those texts, I've gone to different podcasts, I've gone back to television station and say that was not what he meant. So why do I don't want to try to drag that issue, but I know one thing is certain, that when it comes to credibility of Peter Obi, it's not something that can be challenged.
But
I'm not looking for
according to the person making the allegations,
I'm looking for a food.
Mr. Ame, according to the person who made the allegations, there are in fact cases in court that have been initiated by the aggrieved aspirants who were eased out of the election process, even though they made payments for forms. Are you not aware, and you are chieftain of the NDC, you're not aware that there are cases in court?
I think for me, I'm aware of cases of people who feel they felt that they did not win the primaries and they had to go to court. I'm aware of that. And these are fundamentals within political democracy. People should have a right, but what they should know is that were they able to come before the appeal panel set up by the party? Because the internal mechanism set up to also look at these issues and some of these complaints. If you look somebody who have to jump when there was an appeal panel set up by the party and the person has to jump straight to court, that means the person does not really have those evidence to present but will look for a way to malign the party. So what we should concentrate on is that the party had an appeal committee. Some of these decisions were reversed. Some were looked at and the merit of the accusation were looked at. And if they were found worthy, the party treated it accordingly. And if they were not, then the party moved forward. And if the person is dissatisfied, there's still the person's right to be able to go to court. And at the end of the day, we'll wait for what the court says.
Your principal and presidential candidates, curiosity of your former political party, also campaigned on the removal of fuel subsidies. So we would have been also where we are today had he become president. And amid, the conflict in Iran, where we see increasing, pump price of petrol, what would have been done differently to cushion the impact of the pump price of petrol that Nigerians are currently experiencing? What would your candidate, if he had become president, have done differently at this point in time in terms of social welfare?
Yeah, in terms of social welfare, first of all, today people go to school. Most of the public institutions have collapsed. Nobody that can earn 1 million will send his child to a public institution. That would have been able to come as a way of making sure public institutions become a place where people can attend, where people can go to school, and it will also reduce the out-of-pocket expenses of parents, so, which is very important, not to come and increase the cost of NECO and WAEC to 50,000 naira. Then two, my principal, my leader, my presidential candidate of my party, clearly stated that there's corruption in the fuel subsidy regime, and that they will tackle the corruption and stop the corruption from expanding, and that when you remove the fuel subsidy, so some of those check gaps that I have mentioned earlier, like look at what Jonathan did. Even if Tinubu had wanted to, yes, you criticize Jonathan, with an uninformed rhetoric, but at the end of the day, he should know that what he would have done was to follow Shopee processes where buses were provided for state. If you provide like maybe 300 buses for each of these states today, public transport would have, be able to help alleviate the kind of cost and pain that public civil servants and private entrepreneurs are facing today. So we don't have the energy. The problem, the cost of energy, is that people still provide generator. We still rely on fuel. Today, the federal government is running to build our road with cement, which have driven the cost of cement by over the roof. And that is not even good, because the government should have known that Nigeria has the largest deposit of bitumen in the world. What are they doing to be able to go into production in that sense? Our government, it comes into place and headed by Peter Obi, I am assuring you it will be about production. It is about focus on the capacity of local entrepreneurs to be able to lead the marketplace of ideas and marketplace of entrepreneurship, and also develop an agricultural policy that will drive hunger out of the home of every Nigerian.
All right, Mr. Mayor, grand plans there that you have highlighted, but some would say talk is cheap, because currently, as Nigeria is, there is a funding problem, at least for capital component of the budget. There is a borrowing problem amid all other challenges, and wonder how you can navigate, your party, if it emerged victorious, can navigate all those challenges and solve the problems. But we must anchor at this point, and thank you for coming on the program. Mr. Peter Ame is a politician, former chairman of the Inter-Party Advisory Council, a chieftain of the NDC, and former presidential candidate. Thank you for coming on Political Paradigm.
Thank you.
We'll take a moment now. When we return, we'll expand yet again our reflections on the extension of the deadline, the Court of Appeal judgment validating the powers of INEC as it affects opposition participation in the elections of 2027. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. And so we continue our reflections on the same subject, hovering around opposition politics amid the Court of Appeals judgment validating INEC's powers to regulate participation in the electoral space. And this time around, my guest is rights activist and presidential candidate of the African Action Congress, Mr. Omoyele Sowore, who joins us now live from our Abuja studio. Mr. Sowore, good afternoon and welcome to the Political Paradigm.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So before we get to, the conversation around the timeline, the appeal court judgment, let's begin from the court. And we saw you, interacting with the press just after the last trial proceedings. And, some would wonder if that isn't against, legal codes for, persons who are on trial.
No. Persons who are on trial, presume innocent until they are convicted. So all your rights are intact, and if they have any issues with me speaking about my case, they can go report to the judge, and we'll trash it out within the court. It's not, I'm not bound by any legal code. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a person falsely accused of a crime that I didn't commit, and I have a duty to keep speaking about socio-political issues, including my case. Of course, some of those conversations I have with my lawyers.
All right, because amid that conversation, we also heard you talking about how this is just, the president being afraid of, a challenge in the electoral space. And some would say that is tantamount to you, using that as a platform for campaign.
The elections are coming up in less than 6 months, and candidates of all the political parties have been chosen, except for 3 political parties who failed to upload the names of their candidates. So technically, the elections have process has commenced. So we are all at liberty to talk about the future of the country and what we want to see our country become in the next few years. And the fact that the opposition in the country is under a lot of threat. They have chosen different strategies to silence different opposition groups in the country. And like I said, I'm using the word opposition loosely now. Anybody who is running for office or who is campaigning against the current regime of Tinubu. So we are all at liberty to start talking about the issues. I never stopped talking about the issues since the last election. I never stopped acting, so this is nothing new as far as I'm concerned. They know that.
Now let's get to the big talking point as it affects the participation of political parties in the electoral space, the appeal court judgment validating INEC's powers to regulate timetables for candidates, submission of their forms on its portal. But the argument continues, Mr. Sowore, that, Section 29 cannot be at variance with the guidelines provided by INEC. What are your thoughts on this judgment and on what choice is available to the youth party that instituted this case in the first place?
See, I've been always against the use of courts to interfere in the political process. I see this completely as antithetical to democratic norms around the world. If we want to call our own democracy, let's assume for a second it is. Courts should not be determining what parties do, how they run their internal affairs, and how the parties want to sort out their timetables. The parties, in this case, should be supreme. INEC is supposed to just help organize elections, not help organize parties. And I've stated this publicly that I also blame the parties for it. A lot of the parties are just very weak in challenging the system, and that is reflected in the way the opposition is in Nigeria today. I would urge that youth party to head straight to the Supreme Court, the court of policy and last resort in the country. And hopefully the Supreme Court will resolve this expeditiously. But I should also say that I don't have any expectations. INEC naturally should be working with parties. And this should mean that they can be very flexible about issues that has to do with deadlines that affect parties, because a lot of changes took place, including this year being the year that the Electoral Act for regulating the 2027 elections were enacted and passed into law. You know, all of this, in my view, have been done to muzzle the parties to make sure that they don't get their acts together to put them in disarray and give unfair advantage to the ruling party. And, you know, they are doing other egregious things, including using courts to destabilize parties, you know, arresting and trying people like me for challenging the system. So it's up to the Nigerian people ultimately to put an end to all this.
But wouldn't it be unfair, you know, not to also refer to the political parties and the management of their own internal affairs as well? If you look at Labour Party, there are groups contending for the leadership. If you look at the PDP, it's also in disarray. If you look at other political parties, there are allegations of unfair treatment in the conduct of primaries. And some would say if you extended the timeline for another 6 months, you'd still find a lot of indiscipline in the space. Isn't that also part of the problem?
Well, the question we should be asking is what and who is the cause of the crisis in most of these political parties? You discover that it is the ruling party that has planted different kinds of people and characters in these parties to destabilize them. Our party has been through that before. The person who is responsible for creating crisis in PDP now, that's Nyesom Wike, once hijacked our party because our candidate in Rivers State in 2019 practically won the election against him. So what did he do? He hired some people to hijack our party, and it took us 3 years to retrieve the party back from those characters at the Court of Appeal.
You mean the governorship election in Rivers State?
There's no need.
In 2019?
That was the governorship election. Yes.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Oh, you didn't know that? You
go
didn't
ahead.
know that. So when he did that, yeah, it was that when the governorship candidate Awara went to the Court of Appeal, to the tribunal, he used the person that he had put up in our party to change the party's lawyer. And the lawyer of the party then was then his own lawyer that he personally chose to litigate against him. And that was how our candidate lost in that particular election.
But
so nothing new here. I was just telling you that this is the same method they have used. It has nothing, in most cases, it has nothing to do with indiscipline within the parties. It is outside interference.
Are you talking about Mr. Bio Komabo Awara?
Yes.
Wasn't he in fact
Awara was our candidate.
Wasn't he in fact sponsored by a bigger player in the political system at the time?
He was
those were reports.
It was the African Action Congress. No, it was the African Action Congress political party candidate in Rivers in 2019. Biokwa, yes, Awara, engineer. So, as to the allegations that he might have been sponsored by other persons, of course, we have addressed that conclusively, but that is not what I'm telling you. I'm telling you what happened to our party in 2019 and subsequently after. It's the same things that are happening in PDP now, where Wike is in PDP and is in APC at the same time. And he promises the APC, his principle, to destabilize the PDP so that the PDP will not produce a credible candidate to oppose Tinubu in the election. Tinubu is the one destabilizing SDP. He's the one who has practically hijacked Labour Party through his friends in Abia State and other places. So most other parties are going through the same thing. As the ADC, you don't know that is the APC that's responsible for their crisis And all of these are tied up in the courtrooms. That's why I said courts in the future should have nothing to do with elections. Nothing. We should not have courts go near electoral matters as far as this country is concerned ever again, if we are serious about democratic progress.
While it may be difficult to dispute, the participation of Mr. Wike in the PDP and in the APC, some would say your evidence must be cut and dried. What is the evidence that you have that it is the APC or the President Bola Tinubu himself that is working to destabilize the Labour Party, working to destabilize the other political parties, the ADC? What do you have cut and dried evidence that it is his hands steeped deep inside their challenges? So someone said the game is the game. You would like it if your own opposition was in disarray because to enhance your chances to win your election, wouldn't you, Mr. Shiwore?
That's not democracy. If there's a difference between wishing that your opposition is weak so that you can win election and actually interfering and destabilizing the opposition parties, using official channels, using the judiciary, using subterfuge. Anybody who is in doubt that Tinubu is the one destabilizing parties should look at what Wike is doing in PDP. If that is not enough evidence, I don't know which other evidence you need.
Well, let's make progress, and I'd like us to talk about policy now amid the elections. You're right when you say that the elections have started. You have promised, amongst other things in your campaign, free education. You are scrapping WAEC fees. You're scrapping NECO fees, amongst other ideals that I've heard you put out amid the campaigns. Currently, and I said earlier, there are challenges with funding. For at least we know about capital components. There are 3 budget cycles that are running at the same time. There is the borrowing trend for which Nigerians cry out, time and again when Mr. President sends a borrowing request to the National Assembly. If you became president, how would you navigate these governance challenges to provide the interventions that you are proposing?
So in the midst of this, I just want to go straight to the point because sometimes we miss the real issues. One is policy, and the other is funding for policy. And then the most important is the source of the funding. And it's in this conversation, we also have at the National Assembly, this is not Shiwore who made it up, an investigation into 210 trillion naira that has disappeared from the NNPC, all right? We have the World Bank and the IMF saying that an 8 trillion naira disappeared unaccounted for, right? We have individuals in this country, the EFCC celebrating the seizure of 47 properties from one person, former Attorney General of the country. I'm just using this analogy to tell the story of why we should stop having this conversation about, we don't have funding to fund the education of our children. We don't have funding to construct roads. We have to borrow ourselves back to peonage. We do have funding, but the funding that we have is not applied to what they should be applied to. They are being frittered away, mismanaged, they are being stolen. And that's why I can't stop talking about plugging the loopholes in ensuring that every dime in this country that ought to come to the national revenue space will be protected. That's most important. They should not be frittered, stolen. If after we have 210 trillion naira from the NNPC intact, if after the 8 trillion naira is not missing, now I'm talking to you with a budget of less than 50 trillion naira. But I've been able to recover for you in this just 30 seconds of conversation, almost 220 trillion naira. That should be able to fund our government for 4 years and more. We don't have to borrow a dime. So I'm saying this so that you don't trivialize when we say that, we can be happy and we can make progress if we plug waste, if we plug the frivolous amount of money we spend on overhead for government officials, all the useless things we spend money on and start using them for useful things, you would understand it. Because if I sit here and start giving you economics and mathematics of how we are going to do GDP and all of those things that they bore you down with or bog you down with, you're going to ask me the next question, but it didn't work. Well, my own is very cut and dry, and you used the word earlier. Every revenue, every cent, dime, kobo, naira, dollar that you're making in this country, nobody's stealing it. We are using it because we are in public service. We want to come. We're using it to do what we need to do. At the end of the year, I will have surpluses that will surprise you. When I become the president of Nigeria, within a year, people will be accusing me of using talisman to run the country, to generate revenue, because we keep all the thieves away. And we will fund our education, we fund our roads, we provide food security. Everybody may not be entirely happy in a year. Don't let me give you too much hope yet, but you will be hopeful of a better future, and you'll get better and better because the funds are there. They're just not in the appropriate place, pockets, or space where they can be used for progress, economic progress for our people.
I'm spoiled for choice in the area of follow-up now. One would be assuming you won the presidency and you don't have a majority support at the National Assembly. What would a minority executive be like in a majority National Assembly? That's on the one hand. But more importantly, the management of the petroleum sector comes into mind at this particular point in time, against the backdrop of the conflict in Iran, with concerns that this administration should do better in terms of providing interventions to cushion the impact of the pump price of petrol. I'm assuming that the AAC, would also not be favorably be disposed to the subsidy regime. What would you do differently in this sector?
See, let me shock you. Iran is at war with the U.S. Iran has, as we speak, petrol is cheaper in Iran than it is in Nigeria. I think they said, as of yesterday, they are selling a liter of petrol in Iran for maybe about 80 naira to 100 naira. What happened? What do you think happened? Management, honesty. They are at war. Their ships have been blown apart. Their ports are no longer working. They are able to manage their economic system in such a way that nobody is dying. And those of us, Nigeria, who has made more money from the crisis, honestly, we are the ones benefiting from the closure of the Straits of Hormuz as we speak, because each time the strait is closed, the prices of crude goes up, and Nigeria gets more money. But what happened to it? We are not spending the money in the right direction. It's probably being frittered away as usual. I have stated, and I will keep saying, that if I'm president of Nigeria, I will subsidize gasoline, the thing you call petrol, because it's the engine room of our economic system. Even for those people who are frying akara, kuli, and all those small business people, what keeps their businesses going is their ability to get a little bit of this from our national asset, which is at this time driven largely by crude, while we wait for the other reforms, because the energy sector, in my view, is way too heavily reliant on crude. We will make sure that there is a diffusion of these sources of revenue, that we no longer rely alone on crude. And I've always stated everywhere I go that the most important resource in this country is Nigerian people. And we have plenty of them. We just need to educate them, motivate them, support them to create some of the biggest economies on the continent of Africa or the world. So, and I use Iran to make my point, because that's the question you're asking, and you can verify this. So why is it that gasoline is still cheaper in Iran, that's at war with almighty America, than it is in Nigeria, which is right now benefiting from even the crisis?
So, amid what you have said, what is the true measure of the success of a government? Is it welfarism to the people at the lower rung of the ladder? Or is it the creation of wealth? And many often cite the success story of China that has perhaps the highest number of millionaires in the world.
Well, it is the quality of life of every individual. It is equality, not inequality, because there's a way we can propound the idea of wealth to the point that we forget that you can have a few wealthy people in a country that has the highest number of poor people. Multidimensional poverty is how they describe our poverty here. And you cannot use the number of private jets parked at an airport to weigh the wealth of a country. It has to be the number of people in your country who are happy, who can feed, who can go to school, who are safe in their houses, in their schools, in their churches, or wherever they might find themselves, and who can find employment. That is how you measure wealth. It is not only by, all the statistics that they throw at you each time you say things are bad. They say, oh, look at the GDP. Oh, look at, our economic standing in Africa.
Right.
We just rebased our economy.
All right.
Foreign forex has, 660 billion we just put in our forex, but the people, they are dying of poverty, hunger, and starvation.
Let me quickly get this one in. I wonder if you're buying into, away from policy now, to politics, I wonder if you're buying into the insinuations around President Tinubu's supposed life presidency agenda. If this were true, the current administration is the one in power. There's the power of incumbency, the state paraphernalia. How would the opposition be reacting to this, and what would be the fate of the opposition?
It's not a point of, it's not a function of reaction. It is to remind them that history is replete with people who have life ambitions. And I've seen so many of them. And Babangida had life ambitions. Abacha had life ambitions. Obasanjo had life ambitions. Even Jonathan, at the point, had life ambitions. I remember Yar'Adua, on his way out of Nigeria, on his last trip before he passed, somebody was Polycarp Iwite, I remember. I was already campaigning for him for the second time, even though he had not been able to do his first time. So all these people always have life ambition, But that cannot take the life away from the resistance of the Nigerian people. They will be shocked, they will be disappointed, and they will find themselves at the footnote of history as one of those people who thought they could take life out of Nigeria's democracy by having this kind of undemocratic life ambitions, only for that life to be snuffed out.
All right, we must anchor at this point. And thank you very much for coming on the program. Mr. Omoyele Sowore is the presidential candidate of the African Action Congress and a human rights activist, an astute defender of democratic ideals and, of course, of the downtrodden. Thank you so much for coming through on Political Paradigm.
Thanks for having me again. Good afternoon.
And that's how it's been on the program today. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back again same time next week. I am Bukola Koka, standing in for your regular anchor, Terry Ikumi. Bye for now.